Hello, everybody. I have Sydney here with me today, and we are going to be talking about how do you take a digital transformation strategy into the world of reality. So, before we dive into our conversation, would you mind giving a quick introduction, Sydney?
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me, Emma. My name is Sidney Madison Prescott, and I am currently the Global Intelligent Automation Lead at Spotify. And what that really entails is creating and managing the company's first foray into intelligent automation, which is robotic process automation combined with machine learning and artificial intelligence and chatbots. So all of that together helps us to basically create efficiencies and really drive innovation and change in terms of the way that our employees work internally. And prior to Spotify, I do have experience with other Fortune 250 companies, specifically in the financial services industry, related to everything from investment banking to also payment processing. And in all of those roles, I also was sitting within the Intelligent Automation Center of Excellence, leading global teams, developing out our strategic approach at an enterprise level to really take on this really innovative technology and to utilize it to fundamentally change the way that we work inside of a company. And most recently, I would say I recently received an award, top 50 Tech Visionaries of 2020, which is amazing. And I am currently working on co-authoring a book about RPA as well.
Well, first, congratulations on the award. That's really exciting. And thanks for sharing that introduction. I'm really excited for this conversation. So, to get us started, my first question for you, going back to that experience you mentioned beyond just Spotify, but to other Fortune 100 and 250 companies, what roadblocks have you experienced while you're working on kind of setting that environment for change and working towards bringing a digital strategy to life?
That's a great question. I think the first roadblock or challenge that we always hit is just the nuances surrounding the new technology. Robotic process automation is relatively new to the IT world. I'd say it's been steadily gaining in popularity over the past 3 to 4 years. But initially, when I started out in intelligent automation back in 2015, it was relatively unheard of. And so there's always that barrier to entry in terms of communicating the benefits, right, and the outcomes that you would receive from such a brand new technology within any enterprise, right? And typically we're working in very heavily regulated industries, and that in and of itself is a bit of a blocker when you start suggesting that we introduce a tool that is somewhat foreign, right, to the rest of your stakeholders. So I think number one is bridging that gap between the known technologies and the truly on the cusp of innovation, those brand new technologies that may be a little bit less familiar to your business stakeholders. And in terms of that, one of the biggest things I have learned is truly just in order to allow stakeholders the ability to embrace technology and to embrace innovation, the knowledge comes first. And that understanding of the platform, the understanding of the potential outcomes, the understanding of the potential methodologies that you would utilize to stand up a tool of this nature in a company which is, again, heavily regulated. You typically have, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of business users. You may have upwards of 100 plus integrated systems, which may or may not be, I should say, integrated. A lot of them are disparate. You're dealing with disparate databases, and all of that combined, it's really building the knowledge set of all of the stakeholders in terms of what role will this new innovation and this new technology play in fundamentally changing the way that you work, the way that you interface with data, the way that you interface with clients. So that just that initial kind of upskilling of knowledge base in terms of a new technology platform and a new way of engaging with IT to where we can bring together business and IT functions, that is can be a bit of a hurdle because there are methodologies and ways of working that we're simply used to as, Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 250 companies. And the biggest barrier in my experience to innovation is asking your stakeholders to actually think differently. And I always love to say, it's not even about thinking outside of the box. It's about thinking there is no box. So now what do I want to do, right? And that can be a struggle. I mean, it can be a real challenge because we are all taught, to go through specific procedures to reach specific outcomes. And what we basically are talking about with innovation is let's even change the way that we frame out how we approach those potential solutions and how we change the way that we frame out how those potential solutions would be leveraged in the enterprise. And I think that can be quite a hurdle sometimes to adjust to that new norm of, again, thinking as if there is no box and there are no limitations. And if we have, a blue ocean of opportunity, what are we going to do with it, right? And that can be a little bit daunting as a business stakeholder and even as a technologist.
So I heard like the idea of upscaling and kind of getting people comfortable with this thought process. So I guess what tips or strategies have you used to kind of overcome that maybe knowledge barrier or comfort level with these new types of technology?
I think one of the biggest things I've learned is never underestimate change management. Change management is everything when you're talking about bringing new technologies into an enterprise. It's all about managing the expectations from an organizational perspective. It's all about understanding the nuances of the relationships and this is really key, understanding the relationships that employees have with tools and also the relationships that employees have with one another within their teams. This is it's typically an extremely dynamic relationship, whether it's tools or individuals, and also even further, the relationship that employees have with processes. And we typically don't think of it that way, but when you investigate and you dive into a specific part of the business, you realize that we're all very, very attached to the processes that we do every day. And we don't really realize that until someone starts to inquire as to, why do you do it this way? Why is this step 3 and not step 5? And you start, feeling a little uneasy about the questions that someone is asking. But really what they're asking is, have you thought critically about, this process end to end? And are there ways that we can optimize this process? But as innovators, our goal is that we have to really be very proactive about the way that we manage the expectations of the stakeholder in relation to the processes, the tools, the people and teams that they are accustomed to. And that's one of the biggest hurdles that I've found. If you're able to navigate through change management, organizational change, typically as humans, we are a little reluctant to embrace change. So understanding the human element of it is very important. And also understanding that challenging a process, a procedure, challenging, sometimes it even comes down to a bigger picture, challenging the existence of a team, right? Like, is this team necessary, right? Has this process matured at a rate where it is truly still serving the business needs that it intentionally was designed to serve? And if the question is no, that may bring about even deeper questions about, why are we still working in this way? Why are we still organized in this way, right? If we aren't reaping significant benefits as a business, as a business team at an enterprise level from the process. And those are very difficult conversations to have in terms of, is this process necessary? Is this, maybe is this team necessary? Does this team need to be restructured in some sort of way? And the biggest lesson that I've learned is not to underestimate the the pushback that you will get from those from introducing those conversations into the environment, but also standing firm. If you truly have a vision as an innovator for a road forward, you see areas of opportunity, whether it's, again, reorganizing a team, bringing in new vendor platforms. It's important to demonstrate the metrics behind the vision. I've learned that as well. It's really key. And that really helps to ease a bit of the tension, a bit of the unfamiliarity with the change that you are basically requesting for the enterprise to embrace.
I know it's interesting that you say you don't even realize how attached you are to processes, because one of the things that I always talk about with people is like, I'm a decently tech savvy person. But when Apple released a new iOS and I had to learn a new way to interact with my iPhone, boy, was I upset about it. And so, that's always like one of the really tangible examples that like you might not even realize how stuck in your ways you are until something small like that can like all of a sudden jog your memory that even if you are down with change, typically it's a little bit of a process and it takes some work. I like the idea of using your metrics and, again, just kind of standard change management practices to kind of help overcome some of that hesitancy. So obviously, especially when you're working in large companies, you're not in it on your own, and you've got a team that you're helping to build and sustain these efforts and get aligned on your vision. So can you talk a little bit about how you build that team, especially if you're upskilling, maybe your typical IT team through that process?
Absolutely. So I'm a very, very big proponent of looking for and building a diverse set of talents within a given team. And within my intelligent automation teams, I always look for individuals that are very innovation first, creative, have a more creative approach and mindset to technology, and a creative, I would say almost like a creative take on how to leverage technology within an enterprise. So I enjoy interviewing candidates who have a really interesting project, whether it's on an individual basis or team basis that they've demonstrated before. And it gives me a feel for the amount of creativity that they have at their exposure. And another thing that I really like in terms of building the team is to really look for individuals who are ready to dig in terms of those challenges that we mentioned earlier, about the resistance that you may face from stakeholders, and really understanding building a team that is truly empowering and enabling the business is very important. So it's important from a technology side to build a team with technologists who also are extremely business savvy. I think that is one of the biggest benefits that I've had in my teams. Is I like the nuance of a technologist who is also maybe has an MBA, or also has had a lot of experience in whether it's accounting, whether it's finance, on the business side, because those two elements together are a powerhouse. Building an innovative team that is tech savvy, but then also has that business acumen is absolutely everything. And it allows you to really speak the language of your stakeholders and to really understand the nuances of their processes, and even the way that they typically execute different business methodologies. But then on the flip side, you also have the expertise at your disposal to understand whether it is integrations, right, between legacy systems. If you have if you have individuals on your team who are great at coding, if you have individuals who have really dived into the data visualization platforms, which are really huge now, it can help drive those metrics again, being able to present those metrics to senior leaders. It's all about building a team that is well-rounded and multifaceted. multifaceted. So not just a team of only developers, right? It's a team of data visualization specialists. It's a team of developers. It's a team of architects, but you're one team with all of these amazing skill sets at your disposal, which then makes you a powerhouse when you enter into the enterprise.
So you mentioned the idea of maybe having some of your team specifically that are on your transformation side of things, having business acumen and that background. Is that one of your key strategies for kind of bringing the business stakeholders along with you on this transformation journey? Or are there other things that are kind of key to the success there?
Absolutely. So I do think that is key to bringing the stakeholders along on the journey. And that's essential in order to have a successful, scalable, repeatable, innovation first technology center of excellence. You have to be able to disseminate information quickly. You have to be able to understand the nuances of the pain points of your business stakeholders, and you really have to be able to speak their language, and vice versa. You have to be able to accurately communicate the technology standards and protocols. And when we walk through the software development lifecycle, it's very easy for us as technologists to think like, oh, everyone knows agile methodologies, right? And it's like, no, the word agile typically is not mentioned, right, in a lot of different business forums. So it's about having the ability to understand where your business stakeholders will need you to help upskill them. And by upskilling them, you are bringing them along on the journey, because then they understand the stake that they have in the overall success of the project. They also understand the potential benefits better. It's a lot easier to understand the benefits of a technology process when you understand the methodology behind the implementation. And all of that combined together allows for a really seamless translation of, this was a manual business process. We were able to do a lot of process optimization. We then were able to communicate effectively as business stakeholders and technologists to understand, what outcomes did we hope to gain from this project. And then throughout it requires, again, fostering that partnership of we know what we are looking to achieve at the end of the day, and we are in alignment in terms of what the expectations are from both teams to make this a reality. So that journey and tying in business and IT together is absolutely critical for success, because it really is less of a divide when you say, this is a partnership. It's not an IT project that's being sponsored by the business. This is a business and IT centric project where we're working together in a really strong partnership to deliver some incredible outcomes that we are both going to reap the benefits from.
So I think some of these strategies obviously are going to translate to this next question as well. But how does getting executive buy-in differ from bringing your stakeholders along on the journey of transformation?
So I think that's a great question, and it's one that we often tend to forget the importance of, which is if you have this incredible vision for the ways that you want to execute a digital transformation in your firm, but you aren't able to adequately communicate that vision, specifically what are the outcomes, right, of this vision? How does it tie into the current key results that the firm is looking at versus, the objectives that we're looking at towards the end of the year, beginning of Q1 of next year? If you're not able to communicate the specifics surrounding what will be delivered and why to your senior leadership, it causes a disconnect between the trajectory of the enterprise as a whole versus the initiatives that you are building within that center of excellence. And that obviously that disconnect, that makes it very challenging to truly achieve an enterprise-wide digital transformation. So you absolutely have to have that senior leadership buy-in, because the buy-in for a digital transformation is one, it's understanding that it is a journey and that it will take time. It's also understanding that we need to break this out into phases so that we see measurable results, right, over time as we journey towards that end state. And then also understanding how does the team that you're building to strategize and to execute this transformation, where will they sit? Will they sit within technology? Will they sit within business? Will they bridge the gap and be kind of a hybrid business tech team? And how will that team be composed? Like who will be the members of that team? Where will the team sit in relation to region? All of these things are key. And it's important to have that buy-in of senior leadership to understand like the regional placement of the team, the size of the team, right? The tool set, which vendor platforms would you use for this transformation and why? Again, to avoid a lot of duplication of costs, overhead costs, choosing the wrong vendor, so that enterprise strategy at the senior leadership level allows for a streamlined approach to transformation that results basically in less duplication of work, less duplication of tool sets in the environment, which I've seen quite often when we don't have leadership buy-in. There are disparate teams buying similar tools, and then you have 5 different data visualization platforms and you don't really know why. So all of that combined really, it takes away from the true benefits of the transformation when you have extreme expenditures on the tool side, duplication of teams across different regions. So it's all about, let's have a strategic vision at the C-suite level, and then let's talk through the journey. What would that look like? Is it a 2-year digital transformation? Is it a 5-year, right? Like how do we continuously improve upon that plan as new technologies, new modalities come into play? How do we embrace those and still remain relatively flexible in terms of the roadmap that we're painting for the company as we march towards that vision of, okay, now we are truly a digitally native company.
I like the comment that you made about this is a journey. It's going to take time, because one of the things that I've seen a lot with like expectation setting, and especially with kind of the connotation that comes along with this idea of digital transformation and moving towards the new speed of things, it still does take time for that transformation. So I guess my last question for you kind of plays into that idea of, what strategies do you have for setting the appropriate expectations to kind of avoid this mindset of like better, faster, more all the time to make sure that you can be successful?
That the expectations are critical, and it starts with managing the expectations at the senior leadership level. So having the conversations in regards to what are the overarching goals of an initiative of this size, and then setting the milestones. I think that's absolutely key. Setting SMART goals, like realistic goals that are achievable, measurable, that is essential, because along the journey, you're able to point out those guideposts and to be able to point to them and say, we achieved, this specific KPI, Q1 of this year, this specific KPI, Q2 of this year. So, and these measurable components are helping you to demonstrate value along the journey. And I think that's absolutely critical to understanding are we hitting the mark in terms of reaching the goals that we originally aspired to? And then a part of managing those expectations is also transparency of efforts and being honest and upfront when the goals and the aspirations fall short, because those pivots often can result in really great transformations as well. if we set goals that we understand we need to modify, if we set goals that we reflect back on and we say, that actually was not the right goal. Like there was a different goal, there was a different goalpost that we should have set. And pivoting in that way often you basically can deliver a stronger end result by embracing the pivot and embracing the change and just being honest with your senior leadership and your stakeholders as to why you pivoted. In my experience, every lesson learned and lesson applied, which is even stronger, helps you to manage expectations and basically helps you also to recalibrate if you feel that the team is kind of straying away from the original objective, or if you feel that the team is continuously missing the targets and the key performance indicators that you originally laid out. It's really great to just say, let's take a time out and let's reflect back, right? Let's reflect on the parts of the journey that we've enjoyed, the parts of the journey that we haven't enjoyed, and let's reflect back on the failures. I think there's a lot of lessons that you can pull from challenges that you may have in relation to the goals that you originally set, and being realistic again and transparent with your senior leaders that, this was the original goal. These were the roadblocks. This was the pivot, right? And then as a result of the pivot, these are the new objectives. And that really helps to manage expectations, keep level setting when your goals actually change and why they're changing. I think that's key.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share these insights with us. I know whether it's some of the larger companies that we've been talking about today, or even lessons that smaller organizations can learn from, if maybe they're just starting on this journey because they haven't had quite the urgency behind them. So for everybody that's joined us, please make sure to follow Sidney on LinkedIn and keep an eye out for that book. I have a feeling we're going to see great things in the future. And thank you again for joining me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Emma. It's a pleasure.